Thank you very much, Fredrik. Good morning, everybody. A warm welcome to each and every one of you, and we are delighted to see that so many of you, and indeed grateful to see that so many of you have taken time off from your busy schedules to spend this day with us. We have put together an exciting, but also a very tight schedule, and it is my duty, unfortunately, to make sure that we will be able to get through the day on time. I have to be ruthless in my job of making sure that we stick to the schedule. And I will also let you know that there is a wireless system that you can have access to. You click into Wayport and Bellona, and then I'm going to give you the password now. If you don't remember the password, there are many Bellona people down there that can tell it to you. It's obviously Bellona, but you take out the L's, 2L, and you insert the number 10. Now, as you heard, we are in a situation where we cannot take it for granted that we actually will get a global agreement on climate change. So we have called the first section of this conference is Europe and the US, the race towards a low or high carbon society. Now you all remember this picture. It's a historic picture for many reasons, but two obvious ones. First of all, that these guys in this picture that represent the transatlantic hegemony or dominance that the world have had in the post-World War II era is no longer in charge. There are people who do not allow cameras into their meetings that are now very important drivers in setting the global agenda. So what do we have to do? As Fredrik explains, those of us who have contributed the most to global warming, what is our role? That is why in this first section, we would like to focus on what the United States can do and what Europe can do. Because we need to strengthen the capabilities of these two regions to be the drivers, to bear that cost and take responsibility. We are extremely lucky to have with us today one of the key architects behind an important driver in designing US energy and climate policy, Dr. Paal Frisvold. Before I invite Paal to come and talk about what he is doing in California and the prospects of an ambitious American climate policy, I'd like just to give you a caption, a very short introduction to where the EU stands. And I think that Bellona has been in Brussels since 1994. We have had some degree of success with regard to being seen, to be heard, and to be understood. And if we shall draw any lessons of that, there are probably two things that have allowed us to do that. And the first thing is that we think in a European terms. We think European. Secondly, we believe that when we contribute with fact-based technologies about what can be done, then the EU is an extremely important arena for designing environmental policies and indeed legislation. Now that means we have to look at what is the goals of the European Union. And I put up here the three most obvious. Now, the Commission came out with a report, a white paper, not long ago, that sets the basis for how the EU shall work. And I think that in Norway sometimes we tend to forget that these 3 points are in fact the most important for Europe. When Russia turned off the export of gas to Ukraine and later to Europe a decade ago, then the alarm bells rang in European Parliament and the European Council of Ministers. No longer was it defense and security policy that was the most important, but it was energy policy. How could we be so vulnerable, people said, in the Foreign Affairs and the Energy Committees? So energy security security that we've heard so often talked about in the United States is indeed an important feature in European policy. Energy independence. That means reducing all the energy that we export. Today, Europe imports 54% of its energy. That has to go down. Growth and jobs. Europe has a sluggish economy. What can we do to allow the new introduction of new technologies and new energy sources to spur that job creation, to bring about the competitiveness that Europe needs to face the other regions of the world, to create the jobs. And finally, but not least important, obviously, climate security. How can Europe live up to its pledge to reduce carbon emissions by 80 to 95% in 2050? Well, there are three steps that Europe is envisaging. The first step you are familiar with, because we have said it repeatedly at all our conferences since 2008. The 20-20-20 targets, the reduction in emissions, the reduction in energy consumption due to energy efficiency, increased share of renewables, the biofuels in the transport sector, and the revised emission trading system from 2013 to infinite. There is no deadline for the end of that system. That will run on. And finally, the geological storage of CO2 and the program for demonstrating these technologies. This was the first package. To take a stock of where we are, all of these policies are fairly on track. There is, with one exception, and that is indeed energy efficiency. That's why the launch of a new strategy called Sustainable Construction will be launched later this year, which will have much more ambitious targets for energy efficiency in building and construction. The second part, this was the legislative part. The second part are these technologies. There are the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, whereby Europe wants to build a European industrial initiative on each of these, for each of these technologies. We need to scale up, to introduce economy of scale in these new technologies. Concentrated solar, photovoltaic, wind on and offshore, obviously CCS, second and third generation bioenergy, nuclear fission technology, and finally, obviously, the need to bring all these new sources of energy from where it's produced to where it should be consumed. We need super grids from countries to countries. We need smart grids in each section, in each country, and in each household. Part 3, and this is really where we would convey today that we want you to have, this is where we should have our eyes fixed. Because this is probably one of the most ambitious start of a long journey, a legislative journey, whereby the EU shall go through the same features as they did for the first package back in 2009. This is where Fredrik has been asked to be part of Commissioner Oettinger's ad hoc advisory group to try to carve out how can we reach the